Mindset Podcast. We're your guide as you make your way through life, getting better 1% every day. We believe that life is lived and true victory won through adversity. Nothing easy is ever worth it. We believe in the warrior ethos and support those that choose to walk that path.
What's up, everyone? I have what I hope is an interesting topic for you. I have been obsessed, not really obsessed, but sort of mildly obsessed with this story of Chris McCandless, aka the guy who went into the Alaskan in wilderness and passed away. So my family and I recently went to we recently had a family vacation in Alaska. And it was a trip of a lifetime, really. And I didn't really ever pay attention to this story much. I'd seen the movie, I think, before, and I'd heard of it, but really never paid much heed to it. And upon research for this trip and everything, sort of uncovered this again. And since we were going, it was sort of a thing to pay attention to. And I've kind of been doing a deep dive ever since, and I wanted to share those and get this out of my head. And so hopefully there's some stuff here that you're into. So let's start it off. This is I'm calling this the story of Chris McCandless, the tragic inspiration behind Into the Wild. So there's a movie, Into the Wild, and directed by Sean Penn. But first, there's a book by John Krakauer, Into the Wild. And I haven't read the book. I've done the abridged version, and I've seen the movie, and I've seen like 4 or 5 documentaries. So I don't really want to make it a critique of the book or the movie necessarily. What I want to talk about is this guy, what he did, and then some of the things that sort of make me think. And I think they're going to make you think, specifically with this, our warrior mindset application, right? Our thinking about mental health and all this stuff. And, let's just see where it goes. So, it's the call of the wild, right? It's kind of the deal here. The book and the movie Into the Wild. So my family and I went to Alaska, like I said, on a family trip. And so we'll get into this, but there's a bus that this guy wound up living in. And you can actually go to, this is not the real one. We'll get into some stuff about that, but you can visit this thing. You can visit this thing in its movie prop form, and you can go inside of it and check it out. And we did. And it's kind of interesting to do that after having done the research on the story and stuff about this. So if you ever find yourself there, you can go check out that bus. But this is a self portrait of the guy. He took a picture of himself, so you can see what he looks like and everything. But yeah, so there's a movie based on his life and stuff. Chris McCandless, he's born February 1968, so he's a little bit older than me, which I find not that much older. So we're both like Gen Xers, I guess, sort of a thought. He was a very smart dude. He went to I forget where he went to college, but he was a graduate. He had really great grades, very smart guy. And then he just kind of like decided to, pack up and go about his own, adventure, right? He kind of rejected his parents. They were, sort of, I guess, in the mindset would be bourgeois. They were well off, whatever. And he rejected that, so he kind of went on his own way. He wanted to go walkabout, I guess, what you could say. So there's other things there that we can get into. So born 19, what year did I say? 1968, and he wound up going into Alaska, the wilds of Alaska, around 1992. So around that time, personally in my life, I was um, just getting out of high school. So, you know, not that much younger than him, kind of the same wavelength in terms of Gen Xers and stuff. So I get a lot of the conceptual angst that he might have. So he adopted this I don't know, hobo name, Alexander Supertramp, which is, reminiscent of the 60s, I guess. So there's a bit of a, 60s vibe in his approach to life and stuff. So I'm guessing, it was like the allure of Alaska, and I'm playing some, for watching this on video, I'm playing some video of what Alaska is like, so you can get a sense of the enormity of what he kind of is walking into. I guess the allure of that, the allure of the unknown, the great vastness, is what pulled him in. And and he took some books with him, and I'll put a link in there. You can look up the books and stuff. So he's a very literary guy, and he didn't just go straight into Alaska. So if you've seen the movie or follow the documentaries of the book or whatever, you'll know that he spent a good year and a half or so just sort of wandering around. And someone put this map together of his, trips, I guess. And you can see he kind of wanders back and forth, and he even ventures into Mexico at some point, and then eventually makes his way up to and into Alaska, kind of in the middle of the state near the Denali mountain area, which is pretty far removed from a lot of people. There's people, but there's not a ton of people, and it'd be very easy to get lost and you know not really make it as he did. So yeah, so I find that to be an interesting thing, that it's not, when you first kind of hear this or see the basic post or whatever, you think it's sort of like this hero's journey or whatever, but it really isn't. He really spent time um, out and amongst the wilderness on his own. Uh, so as time passed and he's out in the Alaskan wilderness, he encounters harsh weather conditions, scarce food, dire isolation in his mind. Despite his, determination and resourcefulness, tragedy ultimately gets him. So around August 1992, after about 100 days out in the Alaskan wild, he dies of starvation. Okay, and I don't remember the exact mileage, but it is about 20-25 miles away from what could be considered some form of civilization as far as Alaska is concerned. So there's some critique of this, and there's some um, heroization, right? So there's things like, this bus that he found out there that he lived in for a while. They actually had to eventually move this thing because people were making these treks out, and they were getting lost or getting stuck out there in the wilderness, and they would have to go save them and stuff. So they, the state of Alaska actually moved that bus later on. They spent some money in terms of moving it and everything, and taxpayer dollars moving that bus, because people are going out there with this romantic vision of what it is, and ultimately almost coming to the same conclusion that McCandless did. Upon the discovery of his emaciated body, because he died of starvation, remember, and there's more to this we'll get into. The story gained attention, sparking both admiration and criticism. Some people celebrated his audacity, his nonconformity, viewing him as a modern day transcendentalist, that hero's journey sort of a thing. as a person that seeks to break free from societal constraints, living without anything. There's part of the story is he burned his money. Others questioned his preparedness, deeming what he did reckless. The argument is that, his death could have been avoided with a little more caution, a little more planning, a little more experience. He was fairly inexperienced going out there in that area. And having been out there myself personally, I would also die. You have to know what you're doing. These perspectives surrounding this, and his journey is the story is remarkable. But this dichotomy is rooted in individual beliefs and interpretations. Okay, on one hand, many view him as a legend and a symbol of freedom and determination. They see what he did as courageous, courageous rejection of like society, search for authenticity, and just a testament to the human spirit, to the human spirit's yearning for adventure and exploration. Right, so we're comparing him to those great people in the past who have done large sweeping things like this. He embodies living life on your own terms, even in the face of great hardship, right? But then on the other hand, there are those that see him as a very irresponsible person who paid a price for that, um, lacking in preparedness and skills and failure to really comprehend what he was doing. Made him only last about 100 days, made some pretty big errors. Um, didn't have the right provisions, didn't have the right stuff. I mean, he went out there with a 22 gauge with 22 rifle. That's, if you know anything about that kind of stuff, that's not it's not a good choice. Um, and if you watch the movie, he goes out there without even actually having any boots. Like the driver of the truck that ultimately takes him to the head of the trail there gave him his own boots. Um, in a previous episode of this show, we called it prepared. We're going over, the virtues of living a prepared mindset. It's actually the opposite of what this whole podcast series is. Um, but the interesting thing to me is that this diverse range of things, right? Like, and I'm conflicted too. On one hand, I'm like, wow, he shed he shed all this stuff that we all want to. We all hate sitting in meetings and Zoom calls and things, and um, he shed all that. Then on the other hand, I'm like, what the hell were you doing, man? So I think it's worthy of, you know, ongoing dialogue and reflection with each other, right? For example, there's a few there's a few of these posts, right? Like I put some of these examples in here. The beautification of Chris McCandless from thieving poacher into saint. So some of these Alaskan natives actually wrote these articles, newspaper articles, and things like they're literally calling him a poacher. Like there he was out in the wilderness, killing and eating animals without any licenses, and they're hunters. They can't do that. They can't get away with that. So they don't like that, and some are like, hey, they had to spend their taxpayer money to move that damn bus. That's ridiculous, right? Here's a quote out of here. Thanks to the magic of words, and words can indeed be magic, the poacher, Chris McCandless, was transformed in his afterlife into some sort of poor, admirable, romantic soul lost in the wilds of Alaska, and now appears on the verge of becoming some sort of beloved vampire. Given the way things are going, the dead McCandless is sure to live on longer than the live McCandless, who starved to death in the interior Alaska because he wasn't quite successful enough as a poacher. Um, that's a fascinating look at looking at him versus all these other people who put him on a pedestal, right? Including, the author, and including Sean Penn, who made the movie, right? So 2007, Krakauer's book was adapted into the film by Sean Penn, right? Movie, and it's not a bad movie, in my opinion. Now, again, this isn't a review of the movie or the book. But it does I think equally sell him as that hero and almost vilify him in some of the things you do because he's likable, but this is me. He's likable, but kind of almost not, right? He's doing things that you probably don't like, but then, personally he's not a terrible person. So, he's not unlike most of us. Um there's you know uh there's a movement. I mean, if you're following this, people that, like this podcast and others, like, like Jocko's podcast, you know, whatever, Rogan, some of these things. And, there are other characters that we sort of heroify, David Goggins, people like that. Um, we start to think about, you know, modern man and our lack of adventurous spirit, right? How, and not just, I'm saying man in the sense of like mankind, not just men and women, but how we seek comfort, generally speaking. It's the thing that we prefer. I mean, I see it every day. Like people don't want to come into the gym and work hard to better themselves, right? They would rather not do that. And um the call of that complacency, the call of that easy life is just so strong. It just prevents you from getting up and getting out of bed, getting off the couch. The people that came before us, right? Our previous generation, you know, uh, valued independence and self-sufficiently, right? Large amounts of these people, my father included, living just outside of, society's margins. My father was a farmer. He grew his own food, killed his own food, in he really lived that, and there's not so many of us doing this now, particularly around, where I live, urban centers of the world. And we find stories like what Chris McCandless did is threatening and disturbing, right? That's our initial reaction. And it's sort of like, should we be scared of this? Should we be intimidated by doing the work to be able to do these things? And that's what this podcast is about. um we live our lives around this knowledge economy, right? We live our lives uh doom scrolling and looking for things to go online and consume, right? Particularly after a pandemic time is where we are as a society. you know the guy who hunts his own food, chops his own wood, builds his own home can kind of seem suspicious to our delicate views of what that is, right? We often think of that person as a in your face, masculine, you know maybe even a trumper type of person, without getting to know them. We're just making this knee-jerk reaction. I mean, I do these things too. When you see those, the guy with the 4x4, right? We're just judging them. um, it's just a funny thing for me to think about. Okay. I mean, down to the point where, they had to move the bus, right? Um, they had to come get it and move it because people were going out there and getting stuck themselves. While his story is undeniably captivating, it also serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us how important it is for preparation and understanding of risks when we take on something like, I mean, this was an extreme adventure that he went on, but, ultimately, lack of experience and lack of supplies, and limited knowledge contributed to his death. I mean, it's crucial for us when we take on something like this. I mean, it could be anything, is to do the proper preparation. Um, it, it's interesting, and I'll delve into this for a second here. He, you know, there's some stuff that's come out, and it's interesting. Even the author has uncovered some things. It's widely thought that he died of starvation. Turns out that he was eating something that actually added to, um, or it sped up the starvation as well. Like something about the root that he was eating made him sick. So there's some things, if you ancillarily know, about the story a little bit, you'll either hear things like he was poisoned or he died of starvation, and both are kind of true because the root he was eating was slowly um, kind of poisoning to the point where he couldn't eat. So not only was he, didn't really have enough food, and he ultimately probably would have starved had he stayed there. It was making him sick. So there's other things like, people are like, why couldn't he couldn't cross the river because he was too weak, but also he didn't know that, he could have gone just a couple of miles downriver to a place where he could have forded it or whatever. And there's also stories that there were other cabins and things not too far, a mile or 2 miles away from him, that he could have um, seeked refuge in as well. So, some interesting stuff there that, there's a little conspiracy activity on this thing as well, which adds to the legacy of it. Um, One of the most significant reasons why people are drawn to his story is our own personal yearning for freedom. His decision to detach himself from society and societal expectations, it kind of resonates. I mean, it resonates with me, right? Sometimes you feel this trap of your job, your modern life, the grind that you go through every day. And his willingness to just sort of abandon that and go on this grand adventure. It feels like that hero's journey. His belief in the transformative power of the wilderness, it mirrors my own sentiments, right? My own inspiration. I love to go outside. I love to go hiking. I love to be out. I love to camp. Nature is known to have this ability to heal and ground us to the earth. And part of the story encourages people to do that. Even on a smaller level. I mean, we took our family to Alaska. I didn't do what he did, but we stayed in a house and ate in restaurants. But we had this adventure, and it's in us. Um, you know, his story prompts me to think about my own life and my own pursuit of happiness. It makes me think about the choices I make. You know, um, am I living with purpose in when I make these choices? Um, and it reminds me, that life is a balance between seeking that fulfillment. You know, like rejecting the things that I can't handle in terms of that, that grind or whatever. And then but accepting the reality that I live in, accepting the fact that I do have to go to work, that I do have responsibilities, right? And it grounds me back there too. And I think this is a good point to talk about some of my own interpretations. And these aren't my own alone. I mean, but it is definitely something I felt while I was watching the movie and some of these documentaries and stuff. And that is that of mental illness. And we all have struggles and things that we're struggling. Um, this notion that McCandless may have been affected by mental illness or had a disorder. That's a topic of discussion and speculation among a lot of people who have delved into this story. It's impossible to diagnose this from watching a movie or reading a book. Um, but there are aspects of his behavior and thought patterns from his writing and things that we led to some of us to consider these underlying psychological issues. One aspect is his drive for solitude and the extreme lengths to which he went to disconnect from society. He deliberately isolated himself and rejected a lot of his bonds. According to the stories, he was known to make friends and then just kind of dump them and leave them oftentimes without them not even knowing that he had left. Um, his desire and ultimate ties, he severed ties with his family, throwing away his possessions. He literally, according to the story, burnt his money. Going on this journey by himself might be indicative of a psychological condition. Um, Another aspect, his aversion to those material possessions and uh, adhering to society. Um, I mean, many people seek, rejecting materialism, right? A lot of people do that, but the extent which he took, um, giving away his life savings. I mean, he wrote a check that emptied out his savings, or his post collegiate savings for his, you know, next degree or whatever. He just emptied that out. Um, that's pretty extreme. Um, there's lots of big words in terms of people speculating, like oppositional defiant disorder, um, which is where people display a persistent pattern of opposition to or defiance to authority figures, right? And I think I have that to a little degree myself personally. Um, so I can feel that. Um, Lots of assumptions about antisocial personality disorder, bipolarism, um, where people, other things where people show impulsive erratic behavior, one day to the next. Um, I mean, it's important to note again that without any kind of professional evaluation or, an interview with him, which is impossible, we're all speculating, and it is speculation. But I think it's important to also look at this from that lens, because I think, I mean, I know me personally, there are people in my life that I've worried about. I've worried about their mental state and their condition and some of the decisions they make, because I think they're informed by potential issues that are going unaddressed. And, it bothers me. And to think about this person that did this stuff, that rejected his family, threw away his money, went off all over the country doing God knows what, and then disappearing into the Alaskan wilderness and then dying of something like starvation and loneliness, um, simply because he was out of reach for people to help him. It's an interesting thing to look at uh, in your relationships with others, and where you stand personally with your own mental health. Are you pushing people away to the point where they're no longer able to tell you the truth or help you, or all of that? And I think it's important. I think it's important to consider that stuff for yourself, for others, for your family. And this story makes me think of that stuff. Um, there's a lot here. I just needed to get this out of my head to see what came out in terms of this story. Um, I will tell you, Alaska was a beautiful place, and I want to go back pretty bad, and I would love to do some camping there too. Um, you know, I think there'll be a long legacy of this story. Uh, despite his tragic, I mean, ultimately it's a tragic story because he did pass away. It's a strong legacy, I think. There's a lot of interest in mystical aspects to it. It captivated me. I think it would you if you looked into it a little deeper. Um, there's a ton of things out there. I'm going to link it all up. You can check out the book, the movie, some of these YouTube documentaries. It's fascinating. I'd love to hear what you think about this in terms of your own perspective and where you fall. Do you fall with him on the super tramp side? Is he sort of heroic? Is he inspirational, or do you fall on the the Alaskan hunter side, where you think he's just kind of a dum-dum who went in the woods and got himself killed because he didn't know what he was doing. Are you kind of in the middle? Because I'm personally kind of in the middle. I think after I've really thought about this a lot, I think I do fall kind of in the middle, and wavering back and forth as I've experienced these stories and been there myself. And I'm surprised that that's where I fall, because I would have fully thought that I would have fallen on the side of, dum dum, but I don't. And it's caused me some inner to look inside a little bit and to see where I stand on these things. And then, thinking about this mental illness wrinkle as well. And it's just an interesting lens to apply to people I know, people I love, into myself, and try to get some understanding and empathy to some of the things that they're dealing with, So check it out. Hit me back. Let me know what you think. Let me know where you fall. Where do you fall? I'd love to know and love to talk to you about it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And until next time, check you guys later.